Hey everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. Now, I've been feeling a little under the weather, but I'm going to go ahead and try and power through this video anyways, because there's so many things that I want to tell you and talk about today. Finally, I got around to, doing a lot of coding the last week or so. So I'm going to be showing you some of that and kind of been showing you what I've been up to with respect to coding as well. But before that, I want to start off with the level. So in the last video, if you went ahead and watched that one, we talked about the block level, and we talked about how the block level can really help us get an idea of space and whether the geometry works or not. And immediately when we started making the block level and kind of started walking around it, we realized that there were certain problems, right? So for example, this particular, and spoiler alert, you are actually on a space station, all right? So we wanted this to be sort of a space station where we wanted to give it more of a dingy, more of a tighter, packed sort of a feel. And the space station is actually orbiting a planet for the sake of, terraforming. So the idea was, once we got this block level up and we started showing this to people and we started walking around in it, and it just felt more like a theater room, right? I mean, you would think that on a space station, you would think that things like space, in terms of oxygen and so on and so forth, would be really crucial, and you wouldn't have such a massive room with a personalized bathroom and so on and so forth. You wouldn't have this massive sort of a lounge area just for the medical staff and so on and so forth. So it was pretty clear to us that these things didn't really necessarily make sense, and that they had to be changed. So we decided to make a much smaller, a tighter, more packed version of the same situation here, and that's what this is, right? Now, immediately you can see it is substantially smaller, but at the same time, hopefully it makes a lot more sense. So for example, in terms of the rooms here, you can see that there's rooms with multiple beds in them, right? They're much more tightly packed. Instead of having those studio styled rooms and bathrooms, you've got a stalled bathroom, because this is, after all, the medical wing of this space station that you're in. If you caught this whale here slash dolphin, you're probably wondering, well, what the hell is a whale slash dolphin doing here in space? Well, you gotta stay tuned to get that one. Or if you really want to know, then go ahead and watch the last video if you didn't, and you'll get the answer to why that whale is there. So yeah, that's sort of our new map, and this is going to be a spawn room. That elevator is going to be the exit condition for this map. And in order to open this elevator, you're going to need a key card, and you're going to find this key card over here in this locker room. And in order to open this, in order to get into the locker room, what you're going to need is you're going to need a code, which you're going to input over here. So that's a general super high level A to B sort of a situation here, but this is a walking simulator, which means it's going to be a visual storytelling game, and you're going to have a lot of interactables, and you'll be able to pick a lot of different things up and kind of fool around with them essentially, and get a bit of story, like these notes and these little potted plants and this little prop here, which is going to be the nurse's button, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and really quickly hit play and just kind of walk through this environment. Now you can see that we've still got the default Unreal hands, but hopefully by the next update they're gonna get out, and you can see our little whale just kind of chilling here. It's not going to be going in a circle, so don't worry about it, but hopefully all of that will be fixed by the next update. But you can already see that a lot of the props have been kind of worked on, and we can kind of right click to zoom in and see a little bit more detail on all of these. So that's the benefit of just, continuing on from last time. It's just been so much more beneficial to have a block level. Now, I realize that the character package needs some more work, because since I'm using the default character, it's way too fast, it looks around way too quickly, and all of these things I will be changing as we go on. But the real benefit of the block level is essentially, the artist he knows exactly what he needs to do, exactly where what needs to go, and he can just go on and start knocking them off. And you can right here just go ahead and walk through the door into all the other rooms and so on and so forth, and get an idea of space, right? Over here, we have this sort of the new rec lounge. It's more like a break lounge. You've got some machines. These will be interactables, by the way, so you'll be able to come here and click on them, and that's a work in progress at the moment, the coding for that as well. And hopefully we'll have that up and running real soon as well. So it's going to be littered with all sorts of these little interactables and pickables. This is going to be a map, basically. So the idea is going to be when you're walking through here, you're going to be alone, but everything in the environment is going to tell you that there were people here before you who were maybe stuck, who were, for whatever reason, stuck in this area, and they had to make these makeshift sleeping arrangements in this medical bay. So without revealing too much of the story, that's kind of what's going to be happening, where certain events have happened prior to you waking up, which has caused a group of people to have kind of been stuck here and marooned here in this sort of area, which has kind of been locked away from the rest of the facilities. And you'll be able to pick up these notes and so on, their journal entries and so on and so forth, of their struggles of just kind of being here before they did eventually leave you behind. So all of that is going to be part of the story. So that's the new level, essentially. And finally, now that we've got some sort of a level and some sort of a grip on what's going on with our geometry, I've really been working a lot on getting some coding in. Now, let me go ahead and figure out how to get out of here. All right, so coding has been, well, I am a coder. Those of you who have watched any of my other videos before know that. But working in Unreal this has been my first time working in Unreal, and up until this point, I've kind of been getting more and more familiar with Unreal with blueprints. And finally, last week, or about 10 days or so ago, I really started to jump into C++. And while I am familiar with C++, for anyone who's worked in Unreal, you'll realize that just being familiar with C++ does not mean you'll immediately start coding games in Unreal, right? So that's kind of what's been, so that was essentially a bottleneck, but that's what I've been working really hard on. So to show you some of the code that I've done, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the, let's see, the standard demo map. So this is where I just kind of fool around with things, just to kind of show you the sort of things I've been working with. So we have a lot of interactables, and when you get close to them, it's going to update the UI. So all of this is sort of kind of happening between with C++. Now, obviously that's a bug and things like that. I mean, it'll require a lot more polish, but if you're close enough to it, you can press the E button and you can snap it and you can kind of look around to it. Now, I was able to find a really cool tutorial online for how to do some of this stuff, and I was just able to go ahead and make some of the changes as and when I needed them. So that's kind of what's happening over here. You've got these door locks and these door panels. So just to kind of show you, for example, you've got sort of, this is going to be the button, which is going to help you open the door, and you notice how it's in the lock state. So just to show you some of the code, for example, that's what the code for the door looks like, right? So you've got a mesh, you've got a start position where the door is, you've got an end position where you need the door to go to, and I was able to do that through some pre-planning and through some, in general, just some pre-planning. So what do I mean by pre-planning? Well, let me go ahead and pull up a picture real quick and show you what I mean. It was clear to me that we were going to have a lot of different types of interactables. So just me getting a notebook and some pen and paper and just kind of writing out. And I realized that there needs to be an interactable class, right? But underneath that, there needs to be different types of interactables, right? There's going to be ambient interactables, which are going to be, for example, well, when you enter an area and you need a sound clip or the player's thoughts or something like that, some sort of an audio volume situation. So there's going to be ambient interactables, which might be classes which take care of audio playing, which might be classes which take care of certain cinematics and cutscenes playing. But at the same time, there would be world interactables, right? Such as examinable interactables, pickupable interactables, right? Other things like door panels, regular doors, door locks, and so many more other things, right? So I was going with the idea of inheritance in general, and working on pretty much everything that has been my weakness so far. So for me, this is kind of, this program or this project has kind of been about pretty much doing everything that I have been afraid of. So I have so far been afraid of working in Unreal, and that's why I'm doing it. I've been afraid of coding in C++ in Unreal, and that is exactly why I'm doing it. Could I have done this in Blueprints? Absolutely. This game, the scope of this game isn't so big that I couldn't have done it in Blueprints. It would have been so much easier, but that's exactly why I'm doing it in C++, to challenge myself. So to go ahead and show you, for example, we have an interactable class, which just like the sheet of paper said, all it has is it's got, let's see, it's got a box trigger, it's got a Boolean variable, and we can go ahead and build all the other classes on top of it. So for example, if you come over here and if you look here in the world interactable, you can see that it is inheriting from the interactable. And inheritance is something which takes a little while to get used to, but you can already see that excuse me, you can already see that since the world interactable is inheriting from interactable, we can go ahead and we can make a lot of the functions. So for example, this function here, overlap begin, overlap end, these can easily be implementable down the pipeline. So they're being implemented here as well. So just kind of getting accustomed to these UE4 things has been a real challenge. So if I jump back here into my little test playground, then you notice if when I go here and if I hover over my door panel and when I press the E button to interact, it doesn't open. And it doesn't open because if I exit out, you notice here, I'm not sure if I have the log here. Oops. So as you can see, the door is currently locked. So in order to open this door, we need this panel to unlock here. So as you can see, the door panel says that the door is locked, and this panel is controlled by this lock. So you need to go here and put a key code in there, and when you put the right key code, it's going to unlock this door button, and when you press this button, it's going to open the door. So if I go here, and at the moment, and again, it's a bit scrappy because it's a work in progress, but at the moment I've just been focusing on building the systems to get it ready. So as we've got all the textures, as we've got all the materials, as we've got all the meshes, we can just plop them in, and I've already got all the logic done. So when I come here, and when I start typing the code, which is currently just conveniently 1, 1, and 1, it's going to automatically change the state of this to unlock. So if I just kind of jump out for a second, and the game is still on, but if I now click in here, notice that it is locked is no longer true. So if I go ahead and possess the player back, and in my game, if I now come in here and interact with this door panel, you notice that this door opens, and I can close it, and I can open it, and I can close it. So it's been a really cool, exciting week because it's really been me experimenting and learning a lot of Unreal related C++ code. Let me show you some other behavior. For example, this is a test project that I'm working in. Excuse me. So if you ignore the gun, you notice how when you go up to something in this panel, then you have this sort of cinematic zoom in sort of a situation. So if I go ahead and press that, then that's what you have. So that's what will happen eventually in the game, where you're going to zoom into it and you'll be able to push these buttons and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's kind of what's been going on. It's been a really trying, but also a very rewarding week because I have put in so much work into this Unreal C++, and it's like sometimes you end up spending hours and hours on something very trivial, but in the meantime, trying to solve that problem, you end up realizing a million other things, right? For example, I realized the importance of using believe it or not, I got stuck on a problem, especially with respect to this sort of camera transition. And I just kept getting stuck because I was using the on tick. And since I had multiple actors doing camera transitions in on tick, I just couldn't get it to work. But until eventually I tried using events and everything worked, and I realized that it made sense because I had multiple actors trying to change the camera position and on tick, so on and so forth. So you understand a lot of cool things. You know, fooling around and trying to get things to work with the UE4 macros and so on and so forth. So if you're someone who's listening in and you've kind of been afraid to sort of touch Unreal C++, it's scary. It's scary still for me. You know, it's not like I can say I'm some sort of even a remotely good user or whatever, but you got to jump into it. And as you jump into it and as you kind of just, you know, slam yourself with as much information as you possibly can, you start to learn a lot. So all of these classes here, for the most part, even the original ones have been edited, and you know, a lot of this code has been made by me, which I until recently I didn't think I could do. Because I was just so scared. I just wasn't sure how to do it. I mean, I've made games before, but just Unreal kept scaring me. But I decided to jump over it, and there's new problems as well right now, because I have to quickly, very soon, think about, well, how do I How am I going to be triggering the animations? You know, to find out the fine line between when to use C++ and when to use blueprints. So using C++ doesn't mean that you would use C++ for literally everything. For example, for your HUD, you better believe it that it's just, can you make a HUD, for example, in C++ purely? Sure. Do you really want to, though? I mean, I wouldn't worry about it, right? I mean, so for example, this HUD, this very simple HUD, albeit in its current state, is made in blueprints, right? So you have to make the fine line, right? Am I gonna have a blueprint for the animations? Of course, I'm not gonna make a state machine in C++. I don't know if it's even possible. I'm sure it is somehow in a weird way. But would you want to? No, right? I mean, the whole point of it is to find that mix between the two. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to. And I'm really excited because things are really moving along just perfectly. And yeah, that's all I had to say, guys. If you are someone who you know, who's also learning Unreal, and if you're a little bit scared or if you've got some problems, feel free to just drop in and say hi. And if you see something that I'm doing and if you want to know how I'm doing it, then just drop me a message and say, well, hey, how did you do that? Or you know, why did you do something that way or not the other way? So that I can maybe learn from you as well, if you're a more experienced user and so on and so forth. But in general, just some pre-planning helps a lot, right? Really quickly, before I go, for example, I was writing down code for the nurses panel. And before I even started coding the nurses panel, I knew I needed certain things, right? You need the panel to have the correct code. You need the current input, you need a mesh, you need some sort of a trigger volume, you need the text values, right? You need the camera, right? So just a little bit of pre-planning with paper can go a long way, because look, if I keep this here, and if I pull this to the side here, if I go ahead and put them side by side, right? And if I can find, let's see, the H file for it. Excuse me. Yeah, so this is the door lock panel, the H file, and you notice I've got much of the same stuff. I've got the mesh here, I've got the correct password, the current password, the display password. What else do we got? We, you know, over here you can see that I've got some button animations, which I don't have yet, but the buttons need to be pressed. We have a camera, which needs to be put into the final version, but I've already kind of shown you that I've been working on that. We have a text, so we are using the keyboard text, numpad. We have a success and fail sound, so these are things which I've written down. I haven't necessarily always got them in there, but when you've got it on a sheet of paper, then it really becomes a breeze, because then all you have to do is just figure out, well, hey, how do I make a new property? What kind of includes do I need to use? What kind of header files do I need to use? So it becomes a lot less daunting, and that's really helped me. So the message for this video has essentially just been pre-planning. You know, if you're coming from a different sort of a background, from a different engine with respect to games, well, just think about how you would do things in that case, write it down, and then just figure out, well, how do I create a mesh object, right, in C++ and Unreal. And from there on, it just gets a little bit easier. So that's all I wanted to say today, guys. It's been a real pleasure. And once again, if you like what you see, don't forget to just drop me a like, a comment, or a subscribe, or anything, because that really helps me keep you know, motivated and also honest to you guys. And yeah, that's all for now, and I hope to see you guys soon. All right, bye.